Now, if you're working towards the freestanding handstand push-up, the headstand to handstand can be a very useful tool. Now, as you probably know already, I'm a big fan of using the crow or the frog to handstand when learning the handstand push-ups. But the downside with that movement is it can actually be too easy in some ways, and it skips some of the bottom section. If we look at the crow or frog position, the head tends to be a little bit higher, and when you come down and go up, see my head is so far off the floor, and especially if I'm using momentum, it sort of kips me up into the handstand. But if we look at the headstand to handstand, it's the complete opposite. So my head is at full range, meaning it's touching the floor, and I'm not using any momentum to push out of this position. In some ways, it's actually harder than the handstand push-up, especially from a strength point of view. You could argue it doesn't need so much balance, and I don't have to contend with change in direction. Because think about the normal handstand push-up is that I need to come down, I need to show balance on the way down, and then need to stop, change direction and push back up again. Where the headstand up only just needs that push out of that very balanced position at the bottom because you're using more like a tripod. Now, talking about the tripod, we first need to assess what our headstand position is like before we can use it for the handstand push-up. And you will see quite a bit of difference person to person. So a lot of people will go into this position where they make a triangle between the head and the hands, but the hands are nearly internally rotated, and then they look like this. So this one's very balanced on top of the head, and if I tried to push with my hands now, I can't push anywhere near lift off because my weight is just way too stacked on top of the head. And that's fine for just a headstand balance, but what we want to do is transfer more weight back into the hands and bring the center of mass closer towards underbalance so we can push up like that. As soon as we have lift off, we want 100% of the weight in the hands. So when setting up the headstand position, we want to have a bit more external rotation with the hands. I take the hands a little bit wider as well. And when I balance, I'm going to be a little bit more on the forehead or the front portion of the head instead of the top of the head like that. So more like this position. Now I've already got way more weight in my hands now, and you can see my elbows are stacked directly on top of the hands. So I'm ready to push through the palms, and if you look at the angle of the body from the shoulder to the feet, you should see more like this position, which is what we're aiming for in that handstand push-up. You might need to explore how much external rotation you like. You might want to explore how wide the hands are apart, and then how big the distance is between the head and the hands when I create the triangle there. Then if you have a position you're confident with, we can just basically try pushing as hard as we can and see what happens. So when I'm in that position, I'm just going to start to put weight more into the hands, push up, and see if I can get lift off or even go all the way up to handstand. If I do get all the way up into handstand, perfect, job done. We can just integrate that as part of our handstand push-up training, work on the balance aspect with some slow eccentrics, and probably add in some deficit handstand push-up drills as well, and you're on a good way to having a good all-round handstand push-up that you can use. But most people aren't going to make it all the way up to handstand, and that's probably going to be down to a lack of strength or a lack of balance or a lack of skill, so just not setting the position up and pushing at the right time. Now we can make it slightly easier using the wall, so we can go back to our chest to wall. Again, we might need to play with the positions, and now we also got the distance away from the wall that's going to make things either easier or harder. So triangle position into the headstand. Again, we want that weight back into the hands, which is a little bit easier doing it this way around. And then all I'm going to do is push and walk up the wall, open up to the handstand position, then I can go down my eccentric route till I kiss the head to the floor, and then exit out the side. Now that's a good movement if you are strong. It's going to push you up towards underbalance, which means you're pushing back that way a lot, which is not going to necessarily help with the freestanding version from a balance point of view, because you'll probably find you always come down then towards your feet. Now if we do it the other way around, which is back to wall, you can do two things. You can either have one foot against the wall all the time and then push out and up like so, or you can push from this position and then just use the wall when you need to from a balance point of view. And out of those three, I prefer the third one because it's going to carry over the best to the freestanding full version at the end. Now, one thing you'll start to notice is the back to wall version is very similar to the one they use in CrossFit. And the only problem you'll run into is if you make it more like the CrossFit version, is that they tend to stack very much on top of their head more, and they use the wall a lot to get more and more repetitions, which is great if you're in a competition and the goal is repetitions against the wall. But if your goal is a clean freestanding version, we need to be careful how far we go in that direction. But we can also steal a little bit more from the CrossFit version and use a little bit of a kip, a little bit more of a push from the bent legs and opening of the hips to help us out of the position. So if I'm stuck in this position and I can't push up, if I bend the knees a little bit now and then push up, it's much easier to get out of that position. But again, with any type of assistance that we're using, we need to be careful that that doesn't take over, and we can fine tune it and slowly remove it out so we eventually don't need it at all. And the best way to manage that is probably to go freestanding as quick as possible. Use the kip very little or just enough to get you out of the position, and then make sure that you're trying to search and find that balance and hold the handstand at the end. If needed, you could have someone stand there and give you a very light spot. And then if you can do it, a very nice working set would be to do a slow eccentric freestand in. So coming all the way down to your headstand position. Use a tiny kip if you need it to get out of that position, back to your freestand in, and then you could do another eccentric. Now, if you don't have the eccentric, you could do it from a pike position, slowly lowering with control. That obviously needs a lot less balance, a little bit less strength, and then you could go to your headstand from there. Now, I don't think the headstand variation is for everyone. I think most people should probably start with that Croda handstand and work on their eccentrics as priority. And then the two biggies that you should be constantly working on is that underbalance control. So making sure that you can hang out in this position, and then it's easy to add the eccentric, the concentric on top, plus constantly working on our strength in that bent arm pushing. So if you're newer to it, push-up variations, pike push-ups, dips, work into eccentric handstand push-ups, chest to wall handstand push-ups, and then eventually these type of movements. Let me know your thoughts about using the headstand when learning a handstand push-up. If you'd like to support the channel, thumbs up, subscribe, and stick a comment down below. And if you're after coaching, check out my app, link is down in the description. I'll speak to you in the next one.